We have Pat Martens, a bridge preservation engineer, who's going to talk about installing very early strength latex modified.
Talk today a little bit about very early strength latex overlays, and the intent of my presentation is not to get too technical here, but just kind of hit the basics of installation and assure you that you can put these in a lot of different situations. For instance, decks like this out there on your system you may see quite a bit, and often you can probably go in there and do conventional lane closures and do what you need to do to get the work done. But what do you do when you get into situations where you're in high volume areas? Maybe you're in Chicago or Indianapolis or somewhere where lane closure time is just at a premium and it's hard to really find the lane closure time, and you need to get in. Can you get in there and do this over a weekend, or can you get in there and do it overnight? The answer is yes, you can. I want to talk a little bit about, first of all, just in criteria to consider with regard to designing these overlays, and that's be it a latex, low slump, whatever type of rigid cementitious concrete overlay system you have. Really, what you're looking for is some common things here, such as the overlay strength. In particular, how's it going to perform in bending? Because that's what you want to achieve. You want to have good bending strength. These overlays are pretty thin generally. Latex overlays can be poured as thin as 1.5 inches. So you want to make sure it's something that has a little bit of flexibility. You need it to be able to resist propagation of cracking. Probably the biggest thing is adhesion or bond. You need to make sure your overlay is going to adequately bond to the substrate that you're attaching it to. And then with overlays, you want to have a system out there that's going to be fairly dense. The more impermeable, the better, so that you're not allowing chlorides or moisture to be able to attack through the overlay system and down to the interface area. You want something that's going to be durable, abrasive, resistance. And then you need to have good construction practices on these applications as well. Latex is manufactured, basically there's two companies out there that supply the latex emulsion that we put into these overlay systems. One is BASF and the other is Trinzio. We're fortunate we do have a couple of BASF reps here. I'll just kind of point them out without trying to embarrass them out there, but Greg and Jared are over there. They're from BASF, and Chris is here somewhere too. If you're just dying to know some details, in-depth details of latex, but you were afraid to ask, those guys will be available at the hospitality area tonight. You can hit them up on some of the finer questions of latex. There is another obscure company out there called Vandelay Industries. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but if you remember the old Seinfeld clip, George Costanza aspired to be a latex salesman.
Why did I do that? Because I asked you to.
Greg and Jared, you may have some competition out there, I don't know. So you need to be on the lookout for that. But what is this latex modified concrete? Well, it's basically all it is a concrete that's being modified by this latex emulsion or these styrene butadiene polymers. Think of it in that terms. It's basically polymers within an emulsion, and that's dispersed within the concrete through the mixing water. So what latex essentially does is it acts as a water reducer, so you get the advantages of what a water reducer additive would be, in that it's improving the, in reducing the amount of water, it's improving the properties of the concrete in the cement itself. Latex has been around for 50 years, so it is the most time-tested overlay system that's out there, and so it's been around a long time. When would we use latex? You can use it early on new bridge decks or in good decks as more of a preservation type process, but most of the time we see agencies trying to use it on deck rehabilitation type projects on bridge decks that are going to be in fair condition. Sometimes you get caught in situations where you just have poor decks and you need to have an answer, and you can't really replace the deck, but you have to try and get an overlay system in, so you may have to elect to do it in that particular area. You can use it in second generation overlays. So if you have an overlay system, you can mill the overlay off and come back in and put a second generation overlay on there. But the thing it's not a cure-all for bridge deck replacement. If you need a replacement, you're not gonna solve that problem with a latex. And when I'm talking latex, I would include the very early strength latex in with that. So we're talking about both with the type 1 and the very early strength. The difference between the type 1 or the conventional latex versus the very early strength is just in the cement itself. You're using a rapid hardening cement, which is going to be a calcium sulfoaluminate or calcium aluminate type cement. It produces a very rapid setting process, which will allow you to get the traffic open within 3 hours in many cases. There are other alternate mix designs you could use out there with something such as a type 3 mix, but even with a type 3 mix, you're not going to be able to get the very rapid curing. It's going to require at least 24 hours of wet cure plus a dry cure period as well. When would you use the very early strength? Basically, it's going to be when time is of the essence. When you have lane closure situations where you just cannot afford to have traffic down for an extended period of time, you need to get in and get out, be it overnight or preferably over a weekend where you can get a little more production done. So it's going to be your extreme situations. The design is not there's not much difference between the very early strength and the type 1. The ingredients are the same, the cements, the amount of cement's the same, it's just the type of cement. So the early strength, the very early strength mix is going to have this calcium sulfoaluminate or calcium aluminate type cement instead of the conventional Portland cement. So CTS Rapid Set is often a popular choice for these types of overlays. The water cement ratio is going to be just a little bit higher than it will be for a conventional latex overlay, but your ingredients are essentially the same. Your slump's going to be a little higher, and like I said, you get about a 3 hour, in about 3 hours you're going to get the break you need depending on the temperature. It is a little temperature sensitive, so if you're getting down into cooler temperatures below 60, into the 50s, it may take just a little bit longer to get the set time that you need. This is just kind of following off of Jason's, he mentioned about having a safety slide, so this is my safety slide. A comment here would just be, you've got to be careful how you word things and make sure you have them the way you want it out there. So you need to make sure you're reading it right. So some things to consider with the early strength mixes. I mean, the big thing is the saturation of the deck and the curing. That's going to be the most critical part of these installations. And as I mentioned before, the curing is a little bit different. Your conventional latex is going to be a 48-hour wet followed by a 48-hour dry. The type 3 is going to be 24 and 24, but then the very early strength mix is just a 3-hour wet cure only, and then you can get traffic to it provided you have the strength gain that you need. Contractor experience is pretty important on these things. You really want to have somebody out there that's done these before and knows how to put them in. They can get in trouble in a big hurry if they don't. So some states may set up qualification requirements for these types of contracts to make sure they have people on board that are familiar with how to handle and place these rapid set type mixtures. With hydroblasting, I think, is the preferred method to prep these surfaces. It doesn't have to be necessarily, though. The main thing is you have to have good sound substrate. I think the nice thing about hydro surface prep is it gives you just a little added safety factor in that you're getting a much more bondable surface area for your overlay, so you're not as likely to have interface failures. The other nice thing about hydro surface prep with latex installations is you're often able to waive the rebar clearance requirements, which means you don't have to chip underneath the exposed reinforcing steel as you would with other products you'd put in. Of course, that is dependent on the substrate being sound. And then these are specialty mixes, so they are installed with mobile mixers. You're not going to ready mix a latex mixture. This is a look at a few bridges that have been done with latex, the rapid setting latex. This one happens to be in Louisiana, down around Baton Rouge area, and this was an overnight installation where the contractor was required to come in overnight, short working window. I don't remember if it was like 10 or 12 hours, something like that, and he had to get in, hydroblast, get his latex poured, cured, and open for the rush hour traffic. He was probably doing 200 to 250 square yards per night which is about the most production you're probably going to be able to get, and that's with hydroblasting. Here's a video that I just wanted to show. This is a variably strength installation that's being done in, it's on I-64 outside of Louisville, Kentucky. And I just wanted to run this and let you kind of see the process. You have hydro surface prep. You have plastic covering the bridge deck, and here are the laborers just pulling the plastic back. The truck is actually backing onto the bridge deck during the pour, and then as he's pouring, he's pulling forward and they're rolling the plastic up, so they're keeping the deck covered. Contractor would thoroughly saturate that deck after after he got it all cleaned up and prepped, and then he would cover it with plastic. That laborer there was he's kind of getting some grout on his broom. That's one good thing about hydro surface prep is you do not have to have a grouted surface. If you're using a milled surface, you have to grout the surface ahead of the latex pour, but you don't have to do that with a hydroed surface. They do like to grout the vertical surfaces or smooth surfaces. You can see here too how close the finishing operation is behind the finish machine itself. Contractor's essentially, as the finish screed is going across, he's tining it and covering it with burlap, and he's got the plastic right behind it. So it's important to get the burlap on as quickly as possible. Has to be nice and saturated, and you're also want to get the plastic on right behind that as quickly as you can. Keep everything, keep all that moisture locked in. So that's just kind of a quick view of an overlay being placed. This is another overlay I just wanted to highlight outside of this was outside Richmond, Virginia. This was weekend work, so they did have an extended period from Friday night through early Monday morning. And this particular project, contractor was supposed to do all this work. He had 5 lanes of traffic, about 2,000 foot long bridge. And I think originally it was set up for 7 weekends, but he proposed to do it in 3, and he was able to do that in 3 weekends. I think it actually took 4 hydro units. And the thing I wanted to point out is just how much you can get done in these installations if you really put the resources to it. This was 3 weekends, almost 15,000 square yards of bridge deck, so about an average of 5,000 square yards per weekend, and they used about 1,123 cubic yards of latex. So pretty, you can see you can do a lot, but you have to be prepared for it. You have to have a contractor that knows what he's doing there. This is a project that was done in Indiana. It's not Columbus, Ohio. I think it's Columbus, Indiana, actually. So this was contractor doing weekend work. It's a combination of some drone and time-lapse video on this video here. And I want to thank, I think it's E&B Paving out of Indiana that did this video and gave me the authority to show it for them. But you'll see they're working both bridges at the same time. Here they're doing some milling on the left lane, that inside median lane, and then they're also working on the other direction at the same time. So he's hydroblasting on that left side while he's milling over on the right bridge there. And this was all done from a Friday night through actually late Sunday. I think they had it open by Sunday afternoon. So it's hydroed. They're getting their finish machine set up. And then the rest of this here is just going to be some kind of random shots of the operation and the loading of the trucks and dispensing of the latex. You can see how close the operation is. You can also see how many people they have out there. They didn't want to short themselves on crew, that's for sure. And you don't want to do that. You don't want to be scrambling around trying to get enough people to go back and cover up your overlay. This is a neat shot here that shows the proximity of everything. You see the pour, the finish machine, and then how close the actual covering of the overlay is. So over 2 weekends, they were able to rehabilitate both those bridges on the interstate. As I close up here, we have developed a team out there, a working group team. It's called the LMC Working Group Team. And just wanted to make you aware of that group of industry people. We've got a variety of different people on the team, but we're looking for more people. We're especially looking for state folks that might be interested in joining our team. So if you're interested in that, let me know. I'd be glad to include you in on our working group. This is kind of our mission, and I want to particularly mention the third bullet there, which is to develop and conduct training programs for the designing and installing LMC overlays. We want to definitely be involved in helping to educate and train with the installation of these systems. So, got to know what happened to George, right?
And you want to be my latex self.
Poor George, just can't buy a break, can he? Just put this out there for a little inspirational thought. I seen this, I thought it was pretty neat. It says a shark in a fish tank will grow 8 inches, but in the ocean it will grow to 8 feet or more. The shark will never outgrow its environment, and the same is true about you. Many times we're around small thinking people so we don't grow. Change your environment and watch your growth. So kind of a challenge for you out there, I guess, is, think outside the box. Think about, breaking paradigms. If you keep doing the same thing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting. So if you have a need out there, by all means, jump at it. Just kind of highlighted the Midwest region here, and this map kind of shows states that are highlighted in orange that have been involved in like rapid setting type installations. There's several you notice out there on the borders that have not. So if you guys would like to get involved, let me or Ed know, Ed Liberati with Hydrotech, and we'd be glad to come out and do a demo or help you to do an installation. That's what I've got.
Outstanding information, so let's give Pat a big thanks.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.